It's actually been a lot less heated than I had at moments worried that it might be. It's potentially controversial because it's about religious belief. Christian, Jewish, Muslim belief.
And you approach it as a non-believer?
Well, I approach it as someone who discounts divine intervention within history.
Okay.
Because I think that that's what you have to do as a historian, certainly in the Western tradition. And there was a certain measure of anxiety, certainly on the part of people involved with it, that people might get offended. But obviously people have certainly disagreed with it, but no one has... there's been no unpleasantness around it.
Okay.
So I'm relieved about that.
So what do you find the ultimate significance of this period is? I mean, is it
massive? Absolutely massive. It's as significant as it is little known. Think of all the other events that are going on in this festival. The tried and tested. It's the Second World War. It's the Tudors. But actually, this is the period where everything that makes us modern really was settled, because it's about the triumph of monotheism. It's the triumph of Christianity and of Islam, and that affects the way that people think. It affects their moral, their ethical presumptions absolutely profoundly, and has totally altered the way that people think from the Atlantic right the way up to the frontiers of China. So that is a massive, massive change, and I think that it's what I would call really the monotheistic revolution. It's probably the greatest revolution in human history. But because we think of the coming of Christianity, the coming of Islam as religious events rather than as civilizational events, we tend not to think of it as a revolution. But if you think of what the world was like before Christianity, before Islam, and then you think of what it's like afterwards, the transformation is remarkable.
It's huge. So when you started working, five years ago was it? Has the process changed at all?
Completely, because when I began it, I had a sense of what the narrative was. That the process of research led me to question quite a lot. Well, a fair deal of what Christians, of what Jews, of what Muslims actually thought about the origins of their faith. Because I came to the conclusion that the very process of fashioning these amazing religious revolutions required people 200-300 years on from the formative moments of that faith to rewrite the backstory, to reconfigure the history, and so in writing about it, there's always this tension between sort of sacred history, religious history, a history that incorporates the notion that God is manifesting himself in the human present, and the necessary scepticism that a secular historian brings, which is to say, well, it can't have happened like that.
So do you think that because this maybe hasn't been as explored or as, say, the Romans, the Romans and with Persian Fire, Rubicon, your previous, but did this make it more satisfying writing this than your previous?
It was much harder, much more challenging, and therefore, in a sense, I suppose, more exciting, really. But also more sort of grueling, because I guess the expression I would use might sound sort of maybe over poetic, but I would say it was a sort of God-shadowed few years. You're constantly aware of, you have consciousness of the divine, of the supernatural, and that's something that I'm not used to in my daily life, actually, thinking about that sort of dimension all the time, and having to try and sort of grope to a way of explaining it in human terms, in civilizational terms. So that did make it harder, but as I say, more challenging, and therefore in a way more exciting.
Well, as a classicist myself, at Durham, I'm interested that obviously you're apparently you've been commissioned by Penguin to make a new translation of Herodotus. Is that correct? How's that going?
It's finished.
It's finished. Okay, right.
It's.
How do you find grappling with that?
Well, I really miss it. I really miss it. It was like a sort of daily fitness routine for my brain. Because you'll know, as a classicist, that Herodotus is divided into 9 books, and each book is divided up into paragraphs. And I set myself this challenge that I would do a paragraph a day, at the minimum. And some of the paragraphs, of course, are very short, some of them very long. So it was quite a challenge, but I enjoyed meeting it. And now that I've finished it, I miss it.
You miss it?
Yeah, I do. Well, because I can't think of any other author I would rather spend as much time with as Herodotus.
Really? Okay.
Because he is the most engaging and entertaining and stimulating and amusing person to live with, and the fact that he wrote 2,500 years ago, and yet you can imagine as you translate him that you're hearing him talk, is the most wonderful thing to have lived with.
Staggering. And lastly, obviously you're speaking in about an hour. What else do you think you'll come to this week? What events are interesting?
Very interested in the Civil War.
Okay.
I think that's a vitally important topic, and I'm really pleased that there's an event on that. And I am also very much looking forward to the debate between Michael Gove and Tristram Hunt.
Absolutely.
Sort of political dimension of where history is going, politically speaking, in schools, and I suppose in a broader context.
Absolutely.
But I'm looking forward to them all.
Well, thank you very much, Tom, for giving up your time today. So, all in all, it has been a fantastically successful opening to the festival. James Holland mentioned earlier that people are here to learn, to be informed, and to be entertained. And I'm certain as the crowds departed into the rolling mist of the Wiltshire Valleys this evening that they really weren't left disappointed. So, this concludes the first CVHF podcast, which will be coming exclusively to you every day this week. And if the excitement isn't all too much, please don't hesitate to get in touch and feedback to us of what you think of the festival thus far, either via Twitter or on the festival website. Now, tomorrow promises to be even more exciting, with the likes of Dan Snow and Amanda Vickery gracing our stages. So, this has been Xander Drury, and until tomorrow, goodbye.